The first time I saw the girl in the garden, I was holding a mug of chamomile tea that my cousin Marcus had made for me. She was standing by the oak tree, wearing something white that didn't move in the wind, and she was looking at the house with my face. Not a face like mine. My face. The same scar above the left eyebrow from a bicycle accident when I was 9. The same frizz in her hair that I'd spent 32 years fighting. When I blinked, she was gone, and Marcus was standing behind me, his hand warm on my shoulder saying, "Claire, you look like you've seen a ghost." I had. But not the kind he wanted me to believe in. Welcome to Little Bunny Stories. If you're here, maybe you know what it feels like when someone you trusted starts rearranging your reality, one small lie at a time, until you can't trust your own memory. Maybe you know the particular terror of wondering if you're going crazy, and the worst terror of finding out you're not, because if you're sane, then someone is doing this to you on purpose. If that's you, subscribe. Not because I have answers, because I have proof. And because the story I'm about to tell you ends with me projecting my cousin's crimes onto a television in my grandmother's dining room while he screamed that the house was cursed. Here's my story. I was 32, freshly divorced, and professionally humiliated when my grandmother Margaret died. My ex-husband took the condo. My ex-boss took my job, restructuring, they'd called it, 2 weeks after I came back from stress leave. And my dignity had been packed in a U-Haul box labeled kitchen misc that I hadn't opened yet because I couldn't face the memory of choosing those plates. Margaret left me her house. Not money, she'd never had much of that. Not jewelry, though there was a pearl necklace in the safe deposit box that I'd worn to her funeral and cried into until the clasp broke. She left me the house on Crescent Hill in Blackwood, a town so small it didn't have a stoplight, just a blinking yellow light by the post office that everyone ignored. The house was a Victorian monster, 3 stories of peeling paint and wraparound porch, built in 1892 by someone who believed in turrets. It smelled like old books and lavender sachets, and the particular dust that only accumulates in rooms where someone has died peacefully in their sleep. Margaret had lived there for 60 years, raised my mother there, grew tomatoes in the backyard that won prizes at the county fair. And in the final years, when her knees turned traitor, she'd sat in the window seat of the front parlor and waved at every car that passed, whether she knew the driver or not. She waved at me the last time I visited, 6 months before she died. I was still married then, still employed, still the kind of person who thought stability was a reward for good behavior. I sat on that window seat and told her about the promotion I was up for, the kitchen renovation we were planning, the life I was building like a house of cards in a hurricane. She held my hand, her fingers twisted with arthritis, her skin like tissue paper, and said, "Claire, promise me something. When I'm gone, you live in this house. Don't sell it. Don't let anyone take it from you. You fill it with noise again. I promise, Gran." I didn't know I was making a vow to a dead woman. I didn't know that the hurricane was already at my door. Marcus appeared at the funeral like a mourner in a movie. Black suit, expensive, slightly too tight across the shoulders he'd been puffing up at the gym. He cried at the graveside, not the ugly crying of real grief, but the delicate, controlled tears of someone who'd practiced in a mirror. He was my mother's cousin's son, technically a second cousin, but in our family, cousin covered everyone under 50 who wasn't your sibling. He was 36, the self-appointed man of the family, though the only family he'd ever managed was his own reflection. I hadn't seen him in 4 years. Not since Margaret's 80th birthday, where he'd spent the entire party in the kitchen talking to my ex-husband about cryptocurrency and looking at his phone whenever Margaret tried to show him her garden photos. At the funeral reception, held in the church basement because no one had thought to check if the house could accommodate 40 people, Marcus found me by the cookie table. He hugged me too long, smelled like cedar and something chemical, and said, "I'm so sorry, Claire. I know how close you were. If there's anything I can do, anything at all, you call me." I mean it, I didn't call him. I spent the next 2 weeks in a motel off the interstate, eating drive-through tacos and staring at the ceiling while my divorce finalized and my former colleagues posted LinkedIn updates about my sabbatical. Then the lawyer called. The will was simple, Margaret's affairs in order. The house was mine, free and clear, along with a modest savings account and the explicit instruction, written in her shaky cursive, witnessed by the postmaster and the librarian, that I was to live in the house for at least 1 year before making any decisions about its future. 1 year. It sounded like a sentence and a salvation at the same time. I moved in on a Tuesday in October. The air was sharp with the promise of winter, and the leaves on Crescent Hill had turned the color of old bruises. I stood on the porch with my 2 suitcases and a box of books, looking at the door that Margaret had painted robin's egg blue in 1987, and I felt something loosen in my chest. Not happiness. Not yet, but the possibility of it, a door that might lead somewhere other than backward. Marcus called that evening. "I heard you moved in," he said, his voice too warm through the phone. "Listen, I'm between projects right now. Let me come help you settle. Just a week. I'll fix whatever's broken, haul the heavy stuff, make sure you're not alone in that big old place." Gran would have wanted someone to look after you. I should have said no. I was a woman who just learned the hard way that men who offered help usually wanted receipts. But I was exhausted, and the furnace was making a noise like a dying animal, and there was a water stain on the ceiling of the master bedroom that I was afraid to investigate. And some part of me, the part that still believed in family, that still wanted to be someone's little cousin, said yes. He arrived on Friday with a duffel bag and a toolbox that looked like it had never been opened. He hugged me at the door, looked past me into the house with an expression I couldn't read, and said, "Wow, just like I remembered. Hasn't changed a bit, it had changed." Margaret had changed it for 60 years. But Marcus wasn't looking at the house. He was looking at the value of it. I know that now, I didn't know it then. The first 3 days were fine. Marcus fixed the furnace, or rather, he called a plumber who fixed the furnace while Marcus watched YouTube videos on his phone. He hauled boxes from the attic to the basement, complaining about the stairs, the dust, the creepy doll collection that Margaret had kept in the guest room. He made coffee in the mornings and insisted on cooking dinner, claiming he wanted to take care of me while I adjusted. On the 4th night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps above me. Not creaking floorboards, the specific, deliberate tread of someone walking from the east side of the attic to the west, then stopping directly above my bed. I lay frozen, counting my heartbeats, until the footsteps started again, moving toward the stairs. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the bed, a habit from my marriage, when I'd learned that safety was sometimes a matter of what you could reach in the dark, and crept into the hallway. The attic stairs were pulled down. I hadn't pulled them down. I never went into the attic. Margaret had told me when I was small that the attic was for old things that needed rest, and I'd never questioned it. "Marcus," I called, my voice cracking. No answer. I climbed the stairs. The attic was dark, lit only by the streetlight filtering through a round window. Boxes, trunks, a dress form wearing a coat that might have been my grandfather's. Nothing else, no one else. I checked every corner, my bat raised, my breath shallow. Nothing. When I came back downstairs, Marcus was in the kitchen, drinking water in his pajamas. "Heard you moving around," he said. "Everything okay?" I heard footsteps. In the attic. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't parse. Concern, amusement. "This house is old, Claire. Old houses settle," they groan. "You probably heard a squirrel." It sounded like footsteps. Stress does funny things to perception. He set down his glass. "You've been through a lot. Divorce, the move, Gran's death. Maybe you should get some rest. I know a doctor in the city, good guy, went to school with my gym buddy. He could prescribe something for the anxiety, just to get you through the transition." I should have said no. But I was tired, and the attic stairs were still down, and I could still hear the footsteps in my head. And some part of me, the part my ex-husband had spent 6 years convincing was irrational, wondered if he was right. Maybe it was stress. Maybe I was hearing things. I didn't call the doctor, but I started doubting myself, and that was the first crack. The phenomena escalated, objects moved. My keys, which I always left on the hook by the door, appeared on the kitchen counter. A photograph of Margaret and me, the one from my college graduation, framed in silver, was turned face down on the mantel. I found it in the morning, my stomach dropping because I knew I hadn't touched it. I never touched that photo. It was too precious, too sharp. Then the lights. The hallway fixture started flickering at irregular intervals, never long enough to call an electrician, just long enough to make me pause in doorways, heart hammering, waiting for the dark to hold. The bathroom light turned on by itself at 2 a.m., 3 nights in a row. I checked the switch. It was a flip switch, not a dimmer, not a timer. Someone had to physically move it. Marcus listened to my reports with increasing gravity. He stopped offering rational explanations. Instead, he started telling stories. We were having dinner. He'd made pasta, heavy on the garlic, which I later realized was to mask other tastes, when he leaned across the table and said, "Can I tell you something?" Gran told me near the end that this house had a history. Before she bought it. She bought it in 1964. What kind of history? In the 1920s, a family lived here, the Whitmores. They had a daughter, Emily, about 8 years old. She died in the house, Scarlet fever, I think, or maybe something else." He lowered his voice. "Gran said she used to hear things, footsteps, crying. She said Emily didn't like other women living in her house. She'd appear to them, warn them. Some of the previous owners, they left quickly, sold at a loss. Gran was the only one who stayed because she was tough. But she always said if another woman moved in alone, Emily might get restless." I laughed. It was a brittle sound. "Are you telling me this house is haunted?" "I'm telling you what Gran told me." He reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was damp. "Claire, I've been hearing things too. Last night I heard a girl laughing, down the hall. And this morning, when I was in the garden, I saw something white by the oak tree. Just for a second, but it looked like— I'm sorry, this is going to sound crazy. It looked like what? It looked like you." I pulled my hand back. My skin was cold, like me, same hair, same build, standing there looking at the house. Then gone. He paused. "I think Emily is trying to tell you something. I think she wants you to leave." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the window seat where Margaret used to wave, wrapped in her afghan, watching the oak tree. I didn't see anything. But I heard the footsteps again, and this time they were in the hallway outside my room. I heard the floorboard creak, the third one from the door, the one that had squeaked since I was 5, and I held my breath, waiting for the doorknob to turn. It didn't, but something scratched the door. Light, insistent, like fingernails on wood. In the morning there were marks. 4 thin lines, too regular to be natural, running vertically down the paint. Marcus photographed them with his phone. "Evidence," he said, though his voice was grim. "Claire, I think you need to see someone, not because you're crazy, because something is happening to you and I don't know how to protect you from it." He drove me to the city that afternoon. The doctor, his friend, the one from the gym, was young, handsome, with a diploma from a university I'd heard of. He listened to my symptoms with a compassion that felt rehearsed. Sleep disturbances, auditory hallucinations, paranoia, objects moving, a growing sense of persecution. He prescribed lorazepam and something else, a name I couldn't pronounce, and told me to rest, avoid stress, and consider that your recent traumas might be manifesting in unexpected ways. "So you think I'm imagining it?" "I think you're experiencing it," he said carefully. "Whether the cause is external or internal, that's what the medication will help us determine." I started the pills that night. Marcus brought me water, watched me take them, tucked me in like I was a child. "I'll be right down the hall," he said. "If you need anything, you call." "I'm here for you, Claire, I promise." I believed him. That's the part that still makes me flush with shame. I believed him because I needed to believe that someone was on my side. My exhaustion had taken my confidence. My job had taken my purpose. And now this house, Margaret's house, my sanctuary, was turning on me, or I was turning on myself, and Marcus was the only person who wasn't running away. I was so stupid. But stupidity, I've learned, is just loneliness wearing a disguise. The lost time started 3 days later. I'd wake up in places I didn't remember going. The first time I found myself in the basement at 4 a.m., sitting on an old trunk, wearing my coat over my pajamas. My feet were bare and filthy, as if I'd walked through the garden. Marcus found me there, shaking, and helped me upstairs. "You were talking in your sleep," he said. "I heard you from my room, something about the girl inviting you to stay. You walked right past me, Claire. You didn't seem to know I was there." I stared at him. I had no memory of walking past him. No memory of putting on my coat. No memory of anything after taking the medication and falling into a sleep that felt like drowning. It happened again, he told me the next morning. "You were in the attic this time, standing in the dark, facing the window. I called your name 3 times, you didn't answer. When I touched your shoulder, you jumped like I'd hurt you. Your eyes were open but empty, like you weren't there." I started keeping a journal, not because I was organized, but because I couldn't trust my own mind. I wrote down everything: what time I took the pills, what I ate, where I found myself, what I remembered. The entries became fragmented, time loops, repeated phrases. "She wants me to stay" appeared in my handwriting on 3 separate mornings, and I didn't remember writing it. Marcus called my mother. He called my aunt. He called my mother's cousin his own mother and told them I was struggling. He sent them photos of the scratches on the door, the moved objects, the empty attic where I stood at night. He told them he was worried, that I needed professional help, that the house was too much for me alone. My mother called me, her voice tight with the particular anxiety of a woman who'd never known how to help her daughter. "Marcus says you're seeing things, Claire. He says you're wandering the house at night. Maybe you should come home." "Just for a while." "I am home," I said. "This is Gran's house. She left it to me. Marcus says she wouldn't have wanted you to suffer there. He says there's a nice facility, private, very discreet. He has contacts. He could arrange everything." I hung up. I sat on the floor of the kitchen, my back against the cabinet where Margaret used to keep the cookie jar, and I cried until my throat hurt. The house was killing me, or I was killing myself. Or Marcus was, but that was paranoid, that was the illness talking, that was me refusing to accept that I was broken. That night, I saw the girl in the garden. I was in the front parlor, the chamomile tea warm in my hands, staring out the window because I was afraid to sleep. The oak tree was black against the streetlight, its branches like fingers. And then she was there, standing in the grass, wearing something white that didn't move. She was looking at the house. No, she was looking at me. Her face was my face. The scar, the frizz, the expression of someone who had lost something and couldn't remember what. I dropped the mug. It shattered on the hardwood. When I looked up, she was gone. Marcus was behind me instantly. "Claire, you look like you've seen a ghost." I turned to him. I wanted to fall into his arms, to let him tell me it was okay, to let him fix it. But something in his eyes, a flicker too fast of satisfaction, stopped me. He looked at the broken mug, at my shaking hands, at the window where I'd been staring, and I saw it. Just for a second. He was glad. He was glad I was terrified. "I need to go to bed," I said. "Alone, please." "Marcus, I need to be alone." He nodded, all concern, all gentleness, of course. "I'll clean this up, you rest. Tomorrow we'll talk about the clinic. Just to get you stable, Claire, just until we figure this out." I went to my room, I locked the door. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I didn't take the medication. I flushed it down the toilet, every pill, and I sat on my bed with the lights on, waiting for morning. The morning brought clarity, or rather, it brought the absence of fog. For the first time in days, I woke up knowing where I was, remembering the night before, the tea, the girl, Marcus's face. I started looking, not at the ghosts at the house. At the details I'd been too afraid, too drugged, too trusting to examine. The attic stairs were down again. I climbed them slowly, my heart hammering, and this time I looked not for spirits but for evidence. The attic was as I remembered, boxes, trunks, the dress form. But the floor was dusty, and in the dust I saw footprints. Small, like mine, but also larger, like Marcus's boots which he'd been wearing every day. And there were drag marks as if something had been moved recently, repeatedly, across the floorboards. I found the speakers on the third day of searching. Tiny, wireless, stuck to the underside of the radiator in the hallway with putty. They were Bluetooth-enabled, the kind you could control from a phone. I left them where they were. I found another in the attic, another behind the refrigerator in the kitchen. I didn't touch them. I needed to know more. The lights were easier. Smart bulbs installed in the fixtures I'd assumed were original. Someone had replaced them recently because the packaging was still in the trash in the garage, buried under coffee grounds. The bulbs could be controlled remotely. Scheduled, flickered, turned on at 2 a.m. I found the powder on the 5th day. It was in a mason jar in the back of the pantry, behind the flour, labeled sugar in Marcus's handwriting. But it wasn't sugar. It was too fine, too white, and when I tasted a grain on the tip of my finger, stupid, I know, but I was beyond caution, it was bitter, chemical. I took a sample, sealed it in a Ziploc bag, and hid it in my purse. And then I found the phone. It was in Marcus's car, which he'd left in the driveway with the windows down while he went for a run. He never went for runs. He went to the gym, or he didn't go at all. But that morning he'd put on running shoes and disappeared down Crescent Hill, and I was in the kitchen and I saw his phone on the passenger seat. I shouldn't have looked, I knew that. But I was already a woman who didn't trust her own mind, and I needed to know if the paranoia was real or manufactured. I picked it up. No passcode, he must have disabled it for the run. Or he thought I was too broken to snoop. The screen was open to an app I didn't recognize. A grid of camera feeds. 6 boxes labeled attic, hallway, kitchen, bedroom, garden, parlor. My bedroom, my kitchen, my parlor. I clicked on bedroom. The feed was live. I could see my own bed, unmade, the Afghan thrown across the window seat. The timestamp said 9:47 a.m. It was 9:47 a.m. I clicked on garden. The oak tree, the grass. And there in the corner of the frame, a figure in white. Not a ghost. A person. A woman, thin, wearing a white nightgown and a wig that looked like my hair. She was walking toward the house, positioning herself, looking up at the parlor window, waiting to be seen. I dropped the phone, picked it up. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold it. I scrolled through the app. There were recordings, dozens of them, timestamps from the last 2 weeks. I clicked one at random, 3:15 a.m. 4 nights ago. The bedroom camera showed me asleep while Marcus crept in. He stood over my bed for a full minute. Then he reached down and adjusted my blanket, smoothing it over my shoulder. He whispered something. I couldn't hear the audio, but I could read his lips. "Good girl," he mouthed. Then he left. Another recording. The attic, 2:30 a.m. Marcus, wearing socks, walking across the floorboards. The footsteps I'd heard, the ones above my bed. Another. The garden, 8 p.m. Marcus, paying the woman in white, cash, counting it into her hand. Her face was clear in the frame. I didn't know her, but I knew what she was, an actress, a prop, the ghost of Emily Whitmore, hired by the hour. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. I walked into the house. I went to the bathroom and vomited until my stomach was empty. Then I looked at myself in the mirror, my face, my real face, with the scar and the frizz and the eyes that had been too foggy to see, and I made a decision. Marcus wanted me to be haunted. He wanted me to be crazy. He wanted me to leave this house so he could take it, because he was the man of the family, because he believed inheritance was a birthright, because my grandmother had left him nothing and he couldn't stand it. I would give him exactly what he wanted. I would be the most haunted woman in Blackwood, and then I would make him believe in ghosts. But first, I needed to understand why. Not why Marcus, that was obvious, greed is always obvious. But why the house mattered so much, why Margaret had made me promise to stay, why she'd fought to keep it for 60 years. I found the answer in a shoebox in the attic, behind the dress form, under a quilt that smelled like her. Her journals. Not diaries. Margaret didn't believe in diaries. These were records, accounts, notes on everyone who'd ever wronged her. She'd suspected Marcus for years. The boy came again today, she wrote, 6 months before her death, asked about the house's value, asked if I'd considered a reverse mortgage. Smiled while he said it. I smiled back. I know what he is. I knew what his father was. The men in that branch of the family have always measured love in square footage. Another entry. 3 months later, he took the jade ring, the one from my mother. I noticed it missing the day after he visited. He'll deny it, they always deny it, but I know, I wrote it down. If something happens to me, Claire must know. She must know what he wants. She must not let him take the house. And the last entry, dated 2 weeks before she died, the handwriting shaky but fierce, the lawyer confirmed the trust. Irrevocable. Claire must live here 1 year. If she leaves, if she is declared incompetent, if she sells under duress, the house liquidates and the proceeds go to the Women's Shelter Foundation. Marcus gets nothing. No one gets anything unless Claire stays. I told her to stay. I pray she listens. I sat in the attic, holding the journal, and I cried for the second time since she died. But these weren't tears of grief. They were tears of rage, hot and clarifying, burning away the last of the fog Marcus had wrapped around me. She knew. She'd always known. And she'd built a trap so elegant that Marcus couldn't win unless I surrendered. The only way he could get the house was to break me, to make me leave, to make me incapable of staying. He'd almost succeeded. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I called in sick to my job, the new one, remote, editing medical transcripts, the only work I could find after the divorce. I told Marcus I was feeling worse, that the medication wasn't working, that the girl in the garden was talking to me now. Whispering, telling me to stay. He loved that, he fed it. What does she say? He asked, leaning forward at breakfast, his eyes bright with hunger. She says this is her house. She says I don't belong here, she says. I let my voice break. She says you're going to take me away, that you'll put me somewhere safe. Is that true, Marcus? Are you going to take care of me? Of course I am, Claire. That's what family does. I smiled at him. A broken smile. The smile of a woman who'd lost her mind. I knew I could trust you. That afternoon I installed my own cameras, smaller than his, hidden in the molding, behind picture frames, in the hollowed-out book on the mantel. I bought them online, paid for expedited shipping, picked them up at a locker in the city while Marcus thought I was at the doctor's office. I learned how to use them. I learned how to record audio, how to stream to a private server, how to make sure no one, not even Marcus, not even his tech-savvy friends, could find them. I hired my own actress. Her name was Gina, and she was a theater student from the community college, hungry for cash and delighted by the secrecy. I paid her more than Marcus had paid his Emily. I gave her specific instructions. I showed her the videos from Marcus's phone, the angle, the timing, the way the ghost stood. I want you to do exactly that, I said. But not for me, for him. Gina smiled. Revenge ghost, I'm in. I also hired a lawyer, not the family lawyer, Margaret's lawyer, the one who drafted the trust. I told him everything. Showed him the journals, the samples, the recordings. He listened, his face grave, and said this is elder abuse, drugging, surveillance without consent, and attempted fraud. We could go to the police today. No, I said, I want something else. I told him my plan. He didn't like it, but he agreed to be present with a notary at the right moment. And then I waited. I let Marcus think I was deteriorating. I let him hear me talking to myself at night, scripted conversations, delivered to the empty room, knowing his microphones were listening. I let him find me in the basement again, this time with a kitchen knife in my hand, staring at the wall, whispering about the girl who wanted to play. He took the knife gently, led me upstairs, and I saw the triumph in his eyes. He was so close to breaking me. He called the family, arranged a dinner. A small gathering, he told me, his hand on my shoulder to say goodbye. Before you go to the clinic, just close family. And we'll sign some papers just to make sure the house is taken care of while you're getting better. You trust me, don't you, Claire? I trust you, Marcus, I said. And I meant it. I trusted him to be exactly the greedy, arrogant, cruel man he'd always been. I trusted him to show his face at the perfect moment. The dinner was set for a Saturday. He invited my mother, my aunt, his mother, 2 cousins I barely knew, and the family lawyer, his lawyer, not Margaret's. He'd hired a caterer. He'd cleaned the house, rearranged the furniture, made it look like a home instead of a battlefield. He even hung Margaret's photos back on the walls, the ones he'd taken down to prepare for the sale. I let him prepare. I helped him in my foggy, medicated way, pointing to where things should go, agreeing with everything he said. Inside, I was counting the hours. Inside, I was steel. The night before the dinner, I stopped performing. I took a long shower. I washed my hair, styled it, put on the pearl necklace Margaret had left me, the one I'd cried into, the one I'd had repaired. I wore black, not mourning black, armor black. I looked in the mirror and I saw myself. Not the haunted woman, not the broken divorcee. Me, Claire, the granddaughter of a woman who'd fought for 60 years to keep what was hers. I slept 8 hours, I woke up clear, and I waited for the doorbell. The family arrived at 6. My mother anxious, her eyes darting to me and then to Marcus, unsure who to believe. My aunt loud, already tipsy on the wine Marcus had provided. His mother cold, looking at the house like it was already hers. The cousins bored, checking their phones. And Marcus, in the center, the host, the savior, the man who'd taken care of everything. He seated me at the head of the dining table, in Margaret's chair, a place of honor or a place of judgment. He sat to my right, where he could watch me, guide me, catch me if I fell. The lawyer sat to my left, his briefcase full of papers that would transfer the house's administration to Marcus temporarily while I was incapacitated. Dinner was served. Marcus made a toast. To family, he said, raising his glass, to taking care of each other. To Gran, who loved this house and who I'm sure would want us to protect it, and Claire, as she would have. They raised their glasses, I didn't touch mine. I was watching Marcus and he was watching me, and I could see the moment he realized something was wrong. It was subtle. A tightening of his jaw, a glance at my hands which were steady on the tablecloth, at my eyes which were clear. Claire, he said, are you feeling okay? I've never felt better, Marcus. Really, the fog has lifted. He laughed, a nervous sound. That's wonderful. The clinic must be doing you good already, even though you haven't. I haven't been to a clinic. I haven't taken your pills in 3 weeks. I haven't been wandering the house at night, and I haven't been talking to ghosts. I stood up, but you have been very busy, haven't you, cousin? The room went quiet. My mother set down her wine glass. My aunt stopped chewing. Marcus's smile was frozen. Claire, I think the stress. I found your phone, Marcus, in your car, the cameras, the speakers, the smart bulbs, the woman in white you paid to stand in the garden. I have it all, recorded, saved, backed up to 3 different servers. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a remote control, and I have something else. Something you didn't expect. I pressed the button. The television in the parlor, visible through the open double doors, flickered to life. I'd connected it to my private server that afternoon. The first video played, Marcus installing a speaker behind the hallway radiator, clear as day, his face, his hands, the speaker. The family watched in silence. I clicked the remote. The next video, Marcus walking across the attic floor at 2:30 a.m., the footsteps. The next, Marcus paying the actress in the garden, counting cash into her hand. The next, Marcus standing over my bed at 3:15 a.m., whispering good girl while I slept. My mother's hand went to her mouth. His mother's face turned the color of ash. That's not, Marcus started. There's more, I said. The doctor you took me to, the one who prescribed the lorazepam and the unpronounceable drug, I looked him up. He lost his license in Michigan for prescribing controlled substances without proper evaluation. He's working off the books now, thanks to a referral from you. I have the emails. The payments, the prescription records. I clicked again. The audio recording played Marcus on the phone with the doctor 2 weeks ago. Keep her sedated, he said, his voice clear and cold. I need her docile for another month, just until the paperwork goes through. I'll make it worth your while. The room erupted. His mother stood up, knocking over her chair. Marcus, what is this? What have you done? It's fake, Marcus said, but his voice was shrill. She's sick. She's paranoid. She's making this up. Then how did I make this up? I asked. I pressed the button one last time. The final video played. It was from 3 nights ago at 3 a.m. The camera was in the hallway, mine hidden in the molding. It showed Marcus asleep in the guest room, and then in the doorway a figure in white. Gina, my actress, wearing the same wig, the same nightgown, standing exactly as the other woman had stood in the garden. She walked toward the bed. She leaned over Marcus, and she whispered, in a voice I'd coached her to use, breathy, childlike, terrifying, "This is my house. You don't belong here." Marcus woke up screaming. The video caught it all, his face twisted in terror, his hands flailing, his voice cracking as he screamed, "Get away from me. Get away." He fell out of bed, crawled backward, pissed himself. The camera caught that too. The family saw it. They saw everything. Marcus, the rational man, the man of the family, reduced to a sobbing child by a woman in a white dress. Just as he tried to reduce me. I paused the video on his face, frozen in terror. "You wanted me to believe in ghosts, Marcus. You wanted me to be so afraid that I'd leave, that I'd sign away my home, that I'd let you put me in a clinic while you sold everything Margaret built. And you almost succeeded. But you made one mistake." I reached into my bag and pulled out Margaret's journal. I opened it to the last entry and read aloud. "The trust is irrevocable. Claire must live here 1 year. If she leaves, if she is declared incompetent, if she sells under duress, the house liquidates to charity. Marcus gets nothing. No one gets anything unless Claire stays." I looked at him. "You never could have had the house, Marcus. Even if you'd broken me. Even if you drugged me into a coma and forged my signature. The trust was ironclad. Gran knew what you were. She knew before I did. And she made sure that the only way to win was to stay, to fight, to not let you take what she left me." Marcus was shaking his head, backing away from the table. No, that's not, she wouldn't have, she did," said a voice from the doorway. Margaret's lawyer stepped in. He'd been waiting in the kitchen as we'd arranged. With him was a notary and a police officer, not to arrest Marcus, though I could have, just to witness. "I'm James Holloway," the lawyer said. "I drafted Margaret Whitfield's trust in 2019. It is, as Miss Claire says, irrevocable. I have the original documents. And I have affidavits from Miss Claire regarding the surveillance, the drugging, and the psychological abuse perpetrated by Marcus Chen. This is not a matter for family dinner. This is a matter for the courts." Marcus looked at his mother. She looked away. He looked at my mother. She was crying, but she didn't move. He looked at the cousins, the aunt, the family he'd gathered to witness his triumph. They were looking at him like he was a stranger, like he was a monster. "I was trying to protect her," he whispered. "The house was too much. She was losing her mind. I was trying to help. You were trying to steal," I said. "And when you couldn't steal, you tried to destroy. But here's the thing about ghosts, Marcus. They only have power if you believe in them. I stopped believing in yours. And I made you believe in mine." He ran. Not out the door, through the parlor, knocking over a lamp, stumbling into the hallway, up the stairs. We heard him in the attic, crashing through boxes, screaming about the girl, about the footsteps, about the house that was cursed. The police officer followed, concerned for his safety. He found Marcus huddled in a corner, clutching a dress form, weeping that "She's here. She's always been here. She won't let me leave." They took him to the hospital. Not the clinic he'd planned for me. A psychiatric ward, where he stayed for 7 to 2 hours of observation. When he got out, his mother wouldn't take his calls. His job fired him. I'd sent the videos to his employer, a pharmaceutical company that frowned on employees drugging their relatives. His condo went into foreclosure. The last I heard, he'd moved to another state, changed his name, and was working at a call center, selling insurance to people who didn't know that the man on the other end had once tried to steal a house by convincing a woman she was insane. I didn't press charges. I didn't need to. The family did the work for me. He was erased from the narrative, cut out of photos, deleted from group chats. He became a ghost in his own right, haunting the edges of family gatherings that he was no longer invited to. The punishment fit the crime. I stayed in the house. I finished the year. I slept in Margaret's room, in her bed, under her quilt, and I never heard footsteps in the attic again. The smart bulbs came out. The speakers went in the trash. The woman in white, both of them, cashed their checks and moved on to other roles. I renovated the kitchen. I replanted the garden. I hung my mother's diploma in the hallway and Margaret's photos on the mantel, and my own drawings from childhood, the ones she'd saved, the ones that proved someone had loved me before I knew what love was. And when the year was up, I didn't sell. I converted the house into something Margaret would have recognized, a sanctuary. Margaret's house, a refuge for women leaving bad marriages, bad jobs, bad families. Women who needed a place to remember their own names. I live in the apartment on the third floor, the one with the window seat where she used to wave. I wave at every car that passes, whether I know the driver or not. I don't believe in ghosts anymore, not the supernatural kind. I believe in the ghosts we make for each other, the stories we tell to control, to frighten, to steal, and I believe in the power of refusing to be haunted. Of turning the lights on, opening the door and saying, "This is my house. You are the one who doesn't belong." But sometimes, on the anniversary of that dinner, I stand in the garden at 3 a.m. I wear white, and I look at the house, and I remember what it cost to keep it. Not the money, the doubt, the fear. The moment I almost believed I was crazy. Then I go inside, I lock the door, and I sleep without pills, without fear, without footsteps in the attic. Because the only thing haunting this house now is the memory of a woman who knew exactly what she was leaving behind. I'm Claire. I'm 32 years old. I'm a survivor of a marriage that tried to shrink me, a cousin who tried to erase me, and a ghost story that I rewrote until it had my ending. If someone is trying to convince you that you're crazy, that your memories are wrong, that your fears are silly, that you need to be taken care of by the same person who profits from your disappearance, trust the part of you that knows better. The part that keeps journals. The part that checks the pantry. The part that looks behind the radiator and finds the speaker. You are not haunted. You are hunted, and you have every right to turn the lights on. See you in the next story.